Hello, and welcome back to A Real Horror Show, and to another collection showcase video. Today we're going to be taking a look at my collection of signed horror art prints that I've acquired over the years. Pretty much since I started this channel, you guys have been asking for this video. And since I talked about art prints being an essential part of my horror collection in my last video, I thought that now's the perfect time to do this. Some of these pieces I'll be discussing today are holy grail standard items in my collection, as these prints have a number of incredible autographs from cast and crew members involved with these horror classics. I've had the absolute privilege of meeting these wonderful people over the years at various events and fan conventions, and it's resulted in me owning some really cool pieces of horror memorabilia. Also, I'll only be going over the art prints in my collection that are signed in this video. I have a handful of art prints that aren't signed, such as this gorgeous Halloween 2018 print by the brilliant Stephen LaRosse Holiday, and various other prints that are stored away in these poster tubes like this, but I can get to those another time. If you're new to this channel and you love all things horror, nerdy, pop culture, please consider slashing that subscribe button. I promise you won't regret it. Also, don't forget to leave a like and comment down below on this video, as it helps me out greatly. Now, without further ado, let's get to it. So we're going to be starting things off today with this incredible 11x14 child's play print done by one of the greatest pop culture artists of our time, the great Jason Edmiston. Jason is a favourite in the horror community and the world of pop culture, and that's for a very good reason. His artwork is absolutely insane, and you'll find that the majority of NECA's retro cloth figures display Jason's artwork on the packaging, including this very art print we're taking a look at right now. Just one more reason why I love the retro cloth line as much as I do. This child's play print is a limited edition of only 100 made, with mine being number 64. And as you can see, this is also hand signed by Jason in the bottom corner. The print depicts everyone's favourite little pissed off ginger Chucky looking as menacing as ever. I honestly think that this is one of those pieces that just speak for themselves. I mean, look how stunning this thing is. The artistry that's gone into the lighting and shadows, especially on Chucky's face, and the overall vibrancy of the colours is just phenomenal. And to top it all off, this print is also signed by the voice of Chucky himself, Oscar-nominated actor and all-around screen legend Brad Dourif, who I have had the fortune of meeting a couple of times over the past few years. Child's Play was the movie that really kick-started my love for the horror genre, and in turn, cinema as a whole and just all things nerdy. So getting to meet Brad Dourif and getting not only this print signed but my Good Guy doll replica as well was just mind-blowing. I love that he signed it with the famous quote,
"Hi, I'm Chucky, wanna play?"
and it really makes it a standout piece in my collection. I'm extremely proud to have this piece hanging on the wall, and it's a real honour to own a print of Jason's amazing work. And next up we have this beautiful, an American Werewolf in London print by the extremely talented artist Gabz. This was sold by the company Vice Press in a limited edition run of only 250 made, with this one being number 34. There was also a variant of this poster that had a more off-white colouring in the border, and the Kessler Wolf was overall more grey in colour, which is more accurate to how it appeared in the film. This variant was more limited and had a lower edition number of just 150, but I went with this standard release as I'm a sucker for these vibrant colours used here by Gabz. The blue tone that he's gone with makes me think of Moonlight, which is very fitting for the subject matter and looks simply incredible. And I've just realised that sounds like some bullshit that an English literature teacher would say. Ah yes, the artist Gabz used the colour blue as a representation of moonlight and David's inner grief. But in reality, Gabz probably used the colour blue just because he wanted to. But in all seriousness, I think he's a genius for that colour choice, and it's made for a stunning piece of work. I saw this artwork for the first time when Turbine Media released their collector's edition of the film, and I fell in love with it right away. So when Vice Press announced that they were doing a screen print of this, it became essentially a day one purchase for me. As you have probably noticed, this has various squiggles going on here, including that of actor Michael Carter, who played Gerald Bringsley, the man who fell victim to the werewolf on the London Underground in one of the movie's most famous scenes. And if you're a Star Wars fan, you'll probably know Michael Carter best as Bib Fortuna in Return of the Jedi. You know, the bloke with the cock wrapped around his neck? And I met Michael at a convention that just happened to be on the next town over from mine. So I was really fortunate that he was only a 10-minute drive away, and it was an absolute pleasure to meet him and just talk about the film. And as you can see, he signed the quote,
"I can assure you that this is not in the least bit amusing,"
which is pretty cool. Also on here we have the great Griffin Dunn, who I actually had the honour of meeting last weekend at HorrorCon UK in Sheffield, and it was really cool to meet meet Griffin. He's been on my wish list of people to meet for a very long time. And as most of you guys will know, Griffin played Jack Goodman, David's best friend in the movie. And it was really hard to decide on which quote I wanted Griffin to write on this art print, as there's just so many good ones. Jack is the biggest comedy relief in the film and has the best lines, but I eventually settled on,
"Have you ever talked to a corpse? It's boring."
"Can I have a piece of toast?" was definitely a top contender as well.
"Can I have a piece of toast?"
And finally, we've also got the American Werewolf himself, David Norton, aka David Kessler, and he signed "Beware the Moon," which is probably the most famous line from the entire movie.
"It's a full moon. Beware the moon."
I've met David a couple of times over the years at different conventions, and he's a really lovely guy. The first time I met him, I told him that An American Werewolf in London is one of my favourite movies ever made. And it still is. I think that movie's an absolute masterpiece in my opinion. And not only that, but American Werewolf in London was the first movie that I ever laid my eyes on. My dad had the movie on VHS, and when I was a little kid, maybe around 4 or 5 years old, something like that, I happened to stumble into the room one night when he was watching it, and I got a glimpse of the TV, and it was the dream sequence scene. You know, where David is running through the woods and stuff? And it's the scene that ends with that jump scare where David's led in the hospital bed and his eyes are bright yellow and he's got all the sharp teeth and stuff. You know the one. And I absolutely shit myself. But I believe that life experience definitely triggered something within me, and that started my fascination with the horror genre and all things spooky. And ultimately I became a horror fan. The trauma was worth it. And when I met David Norton, I told him this story, and he replied with something on the lines of, "Wow, your dad's a real asshole. I love you, Dad," but I agree with David on this one. But I'm so thankful for this incredible movie. As I said, it's one of the greatest movies of all time in my opinion, and Gabz has just knocked it way out of the park with this artwork. And this is definitely a highlight in my collection for sure. And next up, we've got this absolutely gorgeous Scream art print by the great Melvin Mago. This print was sold by Hero Complex Gallery, and much like Vice Press and Bottleneck Gallery, they distribute some absolutely incredible prints of a large variety of movie artworks from all different artists. And if I haven't said it already, I'll be putting a link to all the artists and all the companies that I mention in this video in the description. Unlike most of the artworks that will be featured in this video, besides the Child's Play one I started with, this one isn't in that standard poster size of 36 by 24, but is instead in 24 by 18. And it was a limited edition run of 250, with mine being number 144. Although this edition sold out a long time ago, if you go to the Hero Complex Gallery website, there is another variant of this print currently in stock. But once again, it's a limited edition run of only about 250 or so, and I've got no clue how many are left on the website, so if you're a big Scream fan and you're interested in this print, well, here's your heads up. Get it while you can. And I've got to say that this is the best artwork I have ever seen for the Scream franchise. And my reasoning for that is because of how Melvin has managed to capture the character and essence of Ghostface so perfectly here, in how the killer is illustrated sprinting towards us. The overall composition of this artwork really reflects the feel of the movie too, especially with how the framing is slightly tilted. That somehow really helps emphasize the tension of being chased by Ghostface, and I think it's a super effective technique. So now I've gone from sounding like an English teacher to sounding like an art critic, but this artwork really is that good. And I've had the fortune of meeting a handful of lovely people who played roles in this Wes Craven classic, the horror film that essentially jump-started the modern era. And I met all of these guys at the For the Love of Horror convention in Manchester. This includes the original film's killers, Billy and Stu, aka Skeet Ulrich and Matthew Lillard, and these two guys were such a pleasure to meet. And it was really nice to talk to Matthew, not just about Scream, but about the Scooby-Doo movies that he played Shaggy in, because I watched those quite a lot when I was a kid, and that was an example of perfect casting. And Skeet was a really cool dude too. Of all things, I remember him complimenting my Doc Martens. He thought those were really cool, so yeah, he's a man of good taste. Also on here we have WCW World Champion David Arquette, who played Dewey in the movie, and I really can't express this enough, but he is one of the nicest guys you could ever meet. He's one of those people who just radiate this really happy energy. It was almost almost infectious. And I remember at the convention he was never sat behind his signing desk. He was always stood in front of it, chatting with fans, giving people hugs, a proper gentleman. And finally, we've got the iconic voice of Ghostface himself, Roger L. Jackson. And honestly, this is probably my favourite signature in my entire collection. For starters, Roger insisted in signing this in his red paint pen and assured me that it would look great, as not only is he a voice actor, and a damn good one, but he's also an artist himself. And he was completely right about the red. I love how much this autograph pops, and I love the way he wrote the quote with so much style. Also, Roger was an absolute delight to meet, and as he was writing this quote on my print, he actually spoke the line in his Ghostface voice.
What's your favorite scary movie?
And that was insanely cool to hear in person. And there's still a few people I'd love to add to this print, including Jamie Kennedy, Rose McGowan, I'd say Courtney Cox, but that's probably never gonna happen, and of course Neve Campbell. But the members of the Scream cast that I've met so far have been absolutely lovely people, and it was an absolute honour to add them to this stunning artwork from Melvin Mago. So now we're moving on to the best cast signed pieces in my horror collection, and we're starting with this awesome A Nightmare on Elm Street print by 𝙅𝙊𝙎𝙉𝙎 Pullin. This print was created in collaboration with the company Mondo for the Texas Frightmare Weekend convention in 2019, and also to celebrate the movie's 35th anniversary. I was fortunate enough to attend that convention back in 2019 with my good friend Brad, and that was actually the one and only time I visited the United States properly, at least for now, and it was an incredible experience. I mean, the convention lineup alone was just insane. That's where I met Tim Curry for the first time, as well as Sam Raimi, Bruce Campbell, and also a good majority of the cast of the original A Nightmare on Elm Street. Also, just being in Dallas in Texas was just really surreal. The food was just amazing, and the people I met over there were just so lovely. Honestly, people in Dallas are so hospitable, and I would absolutely love to go back there one day. But getting back to the print, it was originally released at the Alamo Drafthouse Theatre in Dallas at a special screening of the movie attended by the cast. Me and Brad were lucky enough to go to the screening, see the movie in a packed out theatre full of fans, and pick up this print. This was released in an edition of 225, with mine being number 185, and as you can see, it depicts the iconic Freddy Krueger tearing through a sheet of fabric, just like in the opening scene of the movie. And while I was at the convention, I had the pleasure of adding all of these cast members to this print, including the delightful Heather Langenkamp, who of course portrayed the series' primary final girl, Nancy Thompson, and she signed with the quote,
"Whatever you do, don't fall asleep."
As well as Amanda Wyss, who played the very first victim, Tina, and she wrote the star of the infamous rhyme, and that whole dream sequence with Tina may still be my favourite from any film in the Nightmare franchise. And we also have Ronnie Blakely, who portrayed Nancy's mother, Marge Thompson, in the film. And I'm just going to say it now, Ronnie Blakely is one of the nicest people I've ever met in my life, seriously. I was there for the whole 3 days, Friday to Sunday, of Texas Frightmare Weekend that year, and every single day as I was walking around the convention and she was there, she'd shout my name and say hello to me every single day. I was amazed that she somehow remembered my name, and I thought it was really kind, and it's definitely one of those things that I won't forget. And she also plays the piano like myself, so we spent a lot of the time actually talking about music, and as you can see, she wrote the quote, "Mummy killed him." And that scene is also a really underrated highlight from the original movie. And last but not least, we have the legend himself, the one and only Robert Englund, who signed Sweet Dreams. And once again, when it comes to conventions, Robert is probably one of the nicest and also definitely the most generous person you could meet. He takes a lot of time with the fans, and I've had the pleasure of meeting him a few times over the years, including once in full Freddy makeup, which is definitely a life highlight. It was at this convention in Texas where I also got my Freddy glove signed, which is one of my ultimate grail pieces in my collection. But there's a few more autographs that I'm hoping to add to this print down the line, including that of actress Lynn Shay, who portrayed Nancy's teacher in the movie, and for those who don't know, is also the wife of New Line Cinema founder and producer Bob Shay. And I'd also love to add 𝙆𝙊𝙎𝙉 Garcia, who played Rod Lane. And I met 𝙆𝙊𝙎 back in 2018 at Liverpool HorrorCon, but he is also a really nice guy. But one person I don't think I'll be adding to this print anytime soon is Johnny Depp. But I guess a man can dream. Overall, this is a beautiful print from Gary Pullin, and I'm very proud to own this in my collection. Moving on from one titan of the horror genre to another, we have an art print of one of the most famous movie posters in horror history. This is 𝙆𝙊𝙎𝙕𝙎's legendary artwork for the original Friday the 13th from 1980. This art print was sold by Bottleneck Gallery in a very limited run of 125, with mine being number 123. This variant of the print is done on foil stock, which results in this really cool shine effect on the knife. There was also two other variants of this print, a standard variant and one that glows in the dark. This print arrived pre-signed by Spiros Angelikas, who actually created the original design of the poster and did the initial illustration, before 𝙆𝙎𝙎𝙕 painted the final artwork as we know it today. John Carpenter's Halloween is the movie that is said to have jump-started the slasher genre, but the original Friday the 13th is really the movie that defined the subgenre, and it cemented tropes that are still used in horror movies today, and it set the standard for a ton of movies in the 80s that followed. And as you can see, this print is plastered with autographs from people involved in the making of this horror classic. At the end of 2019, I went to Germany for the Weekend of Hell convention, and there I met a few cast members including 𝙆𝙊𝙎𝙎𝙎, who played Kid Jason in the movie's infamous ending sequence, and I still think this is one of the best jump scares ever put to film. And we've also got Janine Taylor, who played Marcy, as well as Robbie Morgan, who played Annie. And Janine and Robbie are both wonderful people. I chatted with the both of them quite a few times over the weekend about all kinds of things, and they're both extremely lovely. A more left field autograph I have on here is that of Ron Milkey, who had a small role in the film as Officer Dorf. And the last autograph that I got from that convention is the one that's probably my favourite on this piece, and it's from the legendary composer Harry Manfredini. When it comes to signatures, I don't think anybody has one quite as extra as Harry's, and it's just so cool. As you can see, he sketched out the notation for the famous sound that he created for the film, alongside the musical score. And over that weekend I spent quite a while chatting to Harry, and it was mainly all about piano composition, chord theory, really nerdy music stuff, but all in relation to horror movie music, and it was awesome. And it's another one of my convention highlights for sure. Also on this artwork is the film's final girl Alice, aka Adrienne King, who I had the fortune of meeting at the For the Love of Horror convention in 2021. She was an absolute pleasure to meet and is extremely kind. And finally, last year I once again attended the Weekend of Hell convention in Germany, and I had the extreme privilege of meeting the man who co-created and directed the original Friday the 13th, Sean S. Cunningham. It was just an honour to meet that man and shake his hand, and I especially appreciate that he not only signed this print once, but twice, adding this blood red autograph on the knife. This is the piece in my collection that has the most signatures, and this poster by Spiros Angelikas and 𝙆𝙎𝙎𝙎 remains as one of the most iconic artworks in horror history. But now I just need to meet Kevin Bacon. Up next we have what is, in my opinion, the most iconic piece of artwork in the history of the horror genre. Well, next to Roger Castell's painting for the poster of Jaws. In fact, this is one of the most famous movie posters of all time. And it can only be Bob Gleason's artwork depicting the pumpkin clutching a knife that was created for John Carpenter's 1978 masterpiece, Halloween. This is another print from Bottleneck Gallery, and similarly to the previous Friday the 13th print we just looked at, this is also done on foil stock, giving the knife that nice shiny appearance. This print was released in a limited run of 175, with mine being number 50, and there was also a standard variant that had a larger run of 375. One of the coolest things about this print is the fact that it is signed by Bob Gleason himself. This is one of those autographs that I never thought I'd have the chance to own in my own collection, let alone on a piece like this of his iconic artwork. Obviously, the importance of Halloween, not only to the horror genre but cinema as a whole, can never be understated, and many people still consider it to be the greatest horror movie ever made. The film started a whole new era within the horror genre and terrified its audiences by bringing horror to the quiet suburban neighborhood. This movie also introduced us to one of the most iconic villains in cinema history with Michael Myers, and put the director John Carpenter on the map. And I can sit here and talk for hours about the importance of this movie, so if you want to see me review this movie on a greater length, there is a video on my channel. But getting back to the print, I've had the absolute honour of meeting multiple people over the years who were involved in the making of this classic, and some of them are present here, including the wonderful Sandy Johnson, who played Judy Judith Myers, Michael's sister, in the infamous opening sequence. I've met Sandy at both Texas Frightmare and The Weekend of Hell, and she is really sweet and very easy to talk to. We also have Nancy Loomis, who portrayed the hot-headed Annie, and I had the privilege of meeting her at Texas Frightmare Weekend and HorrorCon UK. And of course I had to ask her to write the quote.
Hey jerk! Speed kills!
We also have the great Charles Cyphers, who played Annie's father, Sheriff Brackett, and his character gave us one of the most iconic quotes from that original movie.
You know, it's Halloween. I guess everyone's entitled to one good scare, huh?
I met Charles at HorrorCon UK along with Nancy Loomis, and they're both extremely kind people. I remember showing the both of them how the photo of us turned out, and Nancy said it looks like a family photo with my grandparents. And last but not least, we have the boogeyman himself, Nick Castle, who I got to meet at For Love of Horror. And Nick is a really cool guy and he's great with the fans. I've got a few autographs from Nick, and each time he signed it as Nick Castle, The Shape. But on this particular print, I had to ask Nick to sign in orange. He is Michael Myers after all, and I really wanted his signature to pop on this print, and also match the orange colouring of Bob Gleason's artwork. I was mainly inspired by what Roger Jackson did on that screen print, as I really loved that idea. And as an added bonus, I also have this Halloween poster that was given out as a free gift when I saw John Carpenter live in Manchester. To watch the man himself perform his movie themes on stage, and also meet him before the gig, was, well, there's no real words for it. I was in the presence of horror royalty. At the meet and greet, I got my Myers mask replica signed, as well as NECA's Night He Came Home box set, and John was just a super cool guy. I especially appreciated that he wrote Happy Halloween on the NECA box set. That was just awesome. In addition to John, we've also got Sandy Johnson, Nancy Loomis, Charles Cyphers, and Nick Castle. And I also have PJ Souls on here, who played Linda, and there's only one word that came to mind for her to sign.
Totally.
I met PJ at Texas Frightmare Weekend, and she is also really sweet. And I'm really excited to get to meet her again at this year's For Love of Horror convention and add her signature to the Bob Gleason print. Also attending are a few guests that I've never had the chance to meet before, including Will Sandin, who played the young Michael Myers, John Michael Graham, who played Bob, and Tommy Lee Wallace, who played Michael in the closet scene, and the man who is responsible for taking the 1975 Captain Kirk mask and converting it into Michael Myers. And the final signature that you may have spotted on this poster is this one, right at the top here. And that's the autograph of Jim Winburn, who did the stunts for Michael Myers falling from the Doyle House balcony in the film's finale. I met Jim at For the Love of Horror a couple of years ago, and that would end up being his last convention appearance, as he sadly passed away just a month after the event. And I can't begin to tell you just how kind and warm of a person Jim was when I got to meet him. I remember being the last person there for his photo op that day, as I was late for the photo and I actually nearly missed it. When I got to the photo op room, I distinctly remember Jim standing there and saying, "Hey buddy, where have you been? I've been waiting for you." But Jim's passing was an extremely sad loss for the horror community, and I just feel extremely fortunate that I got the opportunity to meet him. Also, it would be an absolute dream to add Jamie Lee Curtis to both of these pieces, but much like Johnny Depp, Courtney Cox and Kevin Bacon, I can't see that happening anytime soon. And that brings us to the final set of art prints I'll be showcasing in today's video. It feels like I've been talking for hours, so it's safe to say that I'm not looking forward to editing this video. But if you've made it this far in today's video, I'm extremely thankful. I know that a lot of you guys prefer the longer, more in-depth content, especially when it comes to the horror collectibles and whatnot. So I really hope you've all enjoyed the video so far. And don't forget to leave a comment down below telling me what your favourite art print was that I showcased today. So the final art prints I'll be talking about today could only be these absolutely gorgeous Evil Dead Trilogy prints from the master of horror artwork, Graham Humphreys. Out of all the collectibles I have on display in this horror collection, this Evil Dead set of prints are the things that people ask me about the most. And it's safe to say that this collection room and setup would not look nearly as cool as it does if it wasn't for these stunning pieces of artwork. Graham has been creating artwork for movies ever since the early 80s, and he actually painted the original UK poster art for both The Evil Dead and A Nightmare on Elm Street upon their release. And to this day, Graham is still producing some of the most incredible pieces of work that you'll ever see. And it's very common to spot his work on a plethora of physical media releases. And the things I love the most about Graham's work is his use of vibrant colours, which are very much on display with these prints, his compositions, and how he manages to capture the essence of the movies in his artwork. And the fact that you can just look at a piece of artwork and you can just know that's a Graham Humphreys piece. His work is easily identifiable and he truly is the master of horror artwork. And on top of all of that, he's an extremely lovely guy and a very dear friend. So Graham, much love to you as always. So first things first, these prints released at different times, and I'm not exactly sure how many in total were printed of each. I'm pretty certain that the Evil Dead 2 print was released in a numbered edition of 250, and the Army of Darkness was an edition of only 100, but I'm not 100% sure on that. I would normally check this, but I really don't want to take these prints down off the wall and mess around with them too much, especially since the detailed cabinet is in the way as well. The original Evil Dead print, however, is one that I actually missed out on initially, but luckily I was able to obtain the last of Graham's artist proofs. There was only 5 of these made outside of the limited run, and the one that I own is number 5 out of 5, so I feel extremely fortunate to own that. But of course, these prints are also signed by various cast and crew members involved with this trilogy, who I've been fortunate enough to meet over the years. As most of you guys will know by now, the Evil Dead movies are my favourites of all time. So owning these prints with all the autographs on them really does mean a lot to me personally and make these prized possessions in my collection. Starting with the Evil Dead print, this is signed by 𝙆𝙊𝙎𝙎𝙎, who played Scotty, Teresa Tilly, who played Shelley, and Betsy Baker, who portrayed Linda. I had the pleasure of meeting them at the Weekend of Hell in Germany, and then later had the opportunity to co-host an interview with them for my friend Emmanuel of Evil Dead Italia. And if you've never checked out Emmanuel's channel, please do so. I'll put a link in the description below. He conducts many interviews with people directly involved with the history of the Evil Dead, and you can find the full live streams of those interviews over there. So go and show Emmanuel some love, or you'll be dead by dawn. And when it comes to this Evil Dead 2 print, I haven't had the opportunity to meet most of these cast members from this film, which is a shame because it's my favourite of the trilogy and probably my favourite movie of all time. Also, rest in peace to the great Danny Hicks. But I did get to meet the special effects legend Greg Nicotero at the Weekend of the Dead convention in Manchester, who worked on the movie with the rest of the K&B effects gang, and he absolutely loved Graham's artwork. Graham was attending this convention, and after Greg signed this print for me, I remember Greg walking up to Graham's stand to inquire about this very artwork, and I don't blame him. And Greg is a really nice and really funny guy too. It was a real pleasure to meet him. And then finally we have Army of Darkness, which is definitely the most vibrant poster out of the set, and it looks absolutely stunning. This print is signed by Billy Bryan, who portrayed the Pit Witch in the movie, but he is best known for donning the iconic Stay Puft Marshmallow Man costume in the original Ghostbusters. Billy is such a legend, and again a real pleasure of a guy to meet. And Ghostbusters is another film that's in my top 5 movies of all time. I can basically speak the script of that film. So naturally I had to come away with a signed 8x10 of Mr. Stay Puft. But as you may have noticed, there is another thing that these 3 prints have in common, and that's the fact that all 3 of them are signed by not only Graham Humphreys, but the king himself, Bruce Campbell, and the one and only Mr. Sam Raimi. I'm not completely certain on this, but I believe that this may be the only complete set of these prints that have both Sam Raimi and Bruce Campbell's signatures on them. So that makes these a one of a kind and also elevates these prints to Holy Grail standard. This also means that the Evil Dead 1 print is practically completely cast signed, with the exception of Ellen Sandweiss, who played Cheryl, but she has unfortunately dropped out of the convention circuit in recent years. And when I showed Sam Raimi these prints, he was absolutely blown away by them. He was seriously so impressed with Graham's artwork that he shouted over to Bruce Campbell at Bruce's table and said, "Bruce, have you checked out these prints? Have you seen these before?" And meeting Sam Raimi was a serious highlight in my nerdy life. As a kid, I grew up with his Spider-Man trilogy, and as a teenager, the Evil Dead trilogy became my all-time favourite movies. And this was at Texas Frightmare weekend when I met Sam and Bruce, and Ted Raimi was also there. And yeah, I have no idea why I didn't get Ted Raimi's autograph on the Evil Dead 2 print next to Henrietta. Honestly, I don't know what's wrong with me, but I'll surely get it next time. But Ted Raimi was also an absolute delight to meet, and I actually own his screen-used costume from Ash vs. Evil Dead. So when I met him, I presented him with the costume, we took a photo, and he told me about the making of Ash vs. Evil Dead. He couldn't believe that I owned it. He recognised it straight straight away and knew it was the one that he wore, and it was a really cool, nerdy Evil Dead moment. But speaking of special moments, it was also at this convention where my greatest horror fan moment happened, when I had my photo taken with Sam, Bruce and Ted in full Ash costume. I'll never forget this moment, and Sam liked the Ash costume that much that he said, and I quote, "Don't go anywhere, I'm ready to shoot a new scene." That was awesome. But in short, this Evil Dead set is a crowning jewel in my horror collection. The setup wouldn't look the same without them, and they are holy grail artworks for sure. And you guys know the word that sums it up the best. Groovy. So there we have it, guys. That is every signed artwork that I own in my horror collection. These are some of the greatest and rarest pieces that I own, and it just feels so good to have finally made this video, and I hope it didn't disappoint. I'll leave a link to all the artists and the companies I mentioned in this video down in the description below, so you can go check them out and of course support them. And as always guys, take care.